Hey guys, welcome to a cool video for you today because you join us in a 1994 Dodge 2500 Cummins. In this video, we are comparing the iconic second-gen Cummins to a brand new 2021 Ram 2500 to see what the differences are, talk about design, interior technology, and most importantly, driving experience. In Kase, this is your truck.
Yeah, this is a very familiar one. We've done a number of videos on this truck. I mean, the only difference really is that I've got a topper on the back of it now because I'm going to get David's help to build out a camping setup back there. So that's going to be incoming. But yeah, we're mostly going to focus on the differences between how the new truck and the old truck drive because it is like hurricane weather outside.
It's insane, yeah. It's Maine, Colorado, and we are in like a typhoon for some reason. But let's start with the engine startup on the old Dodge.
Oh yeah, you can hear the auxiliary fuel pump light up because, of course, the truck is modified, a little extra power.
And there it goes. So this is a, what, 5.9 liter straight six turbo. And I think the second gen Dodge is really what brought the Cummins engine into the mainstream. I know they had older trucks that had it as well, but this is what this truck is known for. Okay, so we're sat in the 2021 Ram 2500 Limited with the 6.7 Cummins. Here comes the startup. Are you ready? Yeah, blink or you'll miss it.
Yeah, it's not very loud.
I mean, is it running?
There's a motor in there somewhere. Feels very far away.
But you'll also notice it's not when you're sitting here at idle.
The whole truck isn't just shaking, but, you know, the old truck shakes because it's full of life.
In the truck world, if you're unfamiliar, most manufacturers now, like Ford and Chevrolet, they build their own in-house diesel engine. So like Ford calls theirs a Power Stroke, Chevrolet calls theirs a Duramax. Chevrolet calls theirs the Duramax, but Dodge, for a lot of decades now, has been going with a company called Cummins, who is probably best known for their commercial applications of diesel engines. A lot of like 18-wheelers you see on the road today use Cummins, and that is an unusual approach, and it's also unusual because it's a straight six, right?
Yeah, the Duramax and the Power Stroke, they're V8s, they always have been, and I like the Cummins because it is kind of a more industrial layout. Semi-trucks use inline sixes. It's a very common engine layout for a more industrial application, and love the way that it sounds. I love the fact that Cummins has been making these diesel engines for ages. They've been around forever, and I think the design of this motor is pretty well sorted. It's a tough engine. So this is a 12 valve.
Okay.
Get on the throttle here a little bit. Obviously, this being an older truck, not very refined, so you hear the motor, you hear the turbo. This one is a 5-speed, but this is the 12-valve Cummins, which means it has a mechanical injection pump rather than an electronic fuel pump.
The other thing about this engine along those lines is you don't need hardly any number of sensors or wires or electronics to run these, right?
Yeah, it's about as mechanical as an engine gets. I mean, there's not a whole lot of sensors or electronics, like you said, at work here.
Now, the other thing you'll notice immediately right off the bat, there's quite a bit more room behind us.
Yeah, of course it's a four-door because majority of modern trucks are sold as four-doors. And that's one of the really big differences, I feel, with new trucks versus old. Is that new trucks kind of have to be more of a jack of all trades. It's got to be a commuter vehicle, it's got to be comfortable, luxurious, it's got to have tech and safety equipment, and it's got to be able to haul things, tow a bunch of weight. It's a lot.
Especially this one at $86,000.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
$86,000. This has to also double as the luxury land yacht, right?
Yeah, and it definitely is. I mean, these seats are comfortable. The materials in this interior are nice. This huge screen in the center looks great. It's a nice truck.
You have done a lot to this engine.
Yeah.
You probably have more in the engine than you had in the truck.
So, I spent, yeah, pretty much. I've spent a little bit more on the powertrain of this truck than I did to initially buy it. So I bought it for $8,000, and like I said, I've spent a little bit more than that on modifying it. And honestly, none of that really was because I had to. Pretty much all of the modifications that I've made on this truck are just bulletproofing it to make more power. Kind of in anticipation of eventually going to compound turbos having a built transmission, built fuel pump, and really trying to push a lot of power from this setup. But in terms of reliability, the only issues that I've had was that my alternator went bad at one point. And for a truck that's about to turn over 250,000 miles, that's pretty impressive.
And that's kind of the big deal with these 5.9s and 12 valves, is they last forever. They're just such a durable, strong, basic unit. Did this truck have any kind of emissions equipment on it when you bought it? I mean, it was bone stock when you bought it.
No, not really. And here in Colorado, all they test for the most part, is just they lug the motor and they do an opacity test.
Right.
So if you're getting a bunch of smoke out of the exhaust, then it's not going to pass emissions. But the emissions regulations for these older trucks here in Colorado, it's not the same kinds of things that modern trucks have to go through.
And 27 years ago, it was much less strict. There were much fewer regulations. So pros, very reliable, easy to make a ton of power, which is another reason people like these second gens.
Yep.
Cons, this is one of the first times I've ridden in Kase's truck, and it's all engine noise.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to talk pretty loud to combat the sound from that 5.9, and it's not even the exhaust noise.
No, it's engine.
It's all like valves, intake, it's engine noise, which is a weird thing.
It's like there's a giant industrial sewing machine in the dashboard, and it sounds like the turbo is next to your head, or maybe it's nestled there behind the cassette player. I mean, it's a loud place to be.
And for truck enthusiasts, that's a really cool thing, but I think for a lot of folks just buying these as work vehicles,
normal people,
to tow their trailer, that would probably get pretty old compared to the new one, which is whisper silent.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's actively making a lot of noise as we drive down the road. Features wise, does your truck have a heated steering wheel?
No.
Heated seats?
I heat my seats manually.
That's gross. Satellite navigation, Apple CarPlay. You have a phone, Apple CarPlay?
Dude, Apple CarPlay is just your phone appearing on the screen, so having a phone is the same as having Apple CarPlay.
Dual zone automatic climate control?
No, not exactly.
Do you have cool stuff like an exhaust brake?
No, and I really want to get an exhaust brake for my truck, but they're kind of expensive.
There you go. Now this thing has every single option, including the wood trim and the sunroof, albeit a pretty small sunroof by 2021 standards. But I mean, it's a different truck for a different market.
Yeah, the new one is like a Cadillac. It steers much better. It rides much better. It's very quiet. The interiors on the new trucks are really nice, although actually I like the cloth seats in this truck a lot. It's not a soft riding vehicle by any means, even compared to newer heavy duties, which compared to other types of vehicles also don't ride that soft. It rides like a freight train, but these seats are comfortable. They're making up for it a little bit.
They're pretty good, yeah. So interior-wise, bench seats, although you do have two bucket-like seats on both ends of the truck. The center console does lift up if you wanted to seat three. But overall, I mean, it's a lot of gray and black plastic. It's a lot of just kind of monotone color, because that's not really what these trucks were built for.
Yeah, it wasn't really meant to be a luxury vehicle, although, granted, when these second gens came out, it was a big step up in terms of making trucks more comfortable. This was a lot more comfortable than, especially the Ram before it, which had leaf springs in the front. This went to coils. It was much quieter on the inside, so for the time it was a big improvement. This was quiet compared to the first gen Cummins.
So gray dashboard, basic radio, right? AM, FM.
Yeah.
Although you've upgraded yours with Bluetooth.
Yeah.
It does have air conditioning.
It does. It's got heat, air conditioning. I've got power windows, power mirrors, power locks.
Cruise control?
Yeah, I've got cruise control. So basically, I have everything you need and nothing you don't. It's comfortable enough and livable enough. I daily drive this truck. It's my only four-wheeled mode of transportation, and it's been perfectly fine. I'm not suffering at all.
So you would suffer, though, if I think you had a family, because the second-gen Dodge was never available, as far as I know, in a crew cab configuration.
Not a full four-door crew cab for mass production. There have been some small, funky, limited, little, weird kind of contraptions that people made, but yeah, the extended cab definitely had, enough seating for most people's applications, but for me, I would rather have my single cab truck than a family. So that's the sacrifice I'm making at this point in my life.
And these trucks too, single cab, 8-foot bed.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's a lot of these second gens. Or if they had that little space behind the seats, they maybe have sacrificed some.
Yeah, definitely a lot of extended cab short beds in these trucks too.
Right.
You see a lot of those
for sure. And we looked at the towing capacity on this. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, it's and it depends on how the truck is configured. If I remember right, the configuration for my truck is around about 12,000 pounds.
Wow, so that is like half-ton levels of towing capacity by modern-day standards.
Yeah, and also newer trucks just tow so much more comfortably too. I mean, an older truck like this can tow 12,000 pounds, but a newer truck towing 12,000 pounds is just going to feel a lot more stable. It's going to feel a lot more competent, better brakes, better everything, really.
That's crazy. And the horsepower on this originally was?
Originally, it was 175 horsepower, 420 pound-feet of torque.
So we have doubled the horsepower on the new one and doubled the torque on the new one.
Yeah.
And one more gear in the transmission. Now, transmission, what were the options?
So you could get an automatic, and actually the automatics in some of these older Rams, it depends on how easy you were on it and how well you maintained it. I've definitely heard a couple horror stories. I know for guys that want to tune up these trucks, if you have an automatic transmission, you're probably going to want to at least do billet input and output shaft, and going through the automatic transmissions takes a good amount of money. These NV4500 5-speed transmissions that came in the manual 12 valves, these are pretty good, pretty solid setups. You don't want to push too much power through them, but if you're easy on it, it's a pretty robust setup. It's a 5-speed, but you start out in second gear unless you're hauling a load or going off-road. And, you drive this truck like a 4-speed. It's always starting out in second, and it definitely, the RPMs are a little high on the highway. I think going 70 or 75 miles per hour, I am sitting over 2,000 RPM, which in this feels like a lot.
And the really interesting thing about this engine transmission combo is, with what Kase has done in the engine, when he gets it in third, like, the thing really pulls well. But it's an interesting acceleration experience because there's such a big delay between gear shifts, and it's not Kase's fault. It's just that the throws are so long and the transmission will be rushed that you're like a lot of torque and then nothing.
It takes about a full second to go into gear.
A lot of torque, yeah, exactly.
Well, and it's funny too because when we raced this truck, especially like in the field at David Morrow's property, I'll start out in the second gear, and I saw a lot of comments that were, that kid doesn't know how to drive, he should have started out in second. I always start out in second.
Right.
But it genuinely takes a long time with these transmissions for it to synchronize and slide into third. And you could really push it and crunch the gear and get it to go in quicker. But again, I mean, this truck is my daily driver, and this transmission has to last a while. Eventually I'm going to put a built transmission in this truck, but I don't want to do that, tomorrow.
Right. No, I agree. It's so interesting, though, riding between the two, because I just got out of the new truck. Coming into this is Kase's daily driver, but if you daily drove that new one and then came into the old one, you would think that this is almost agricultural. I mean, the ride is so much different, and it's really just the sound. The new one just isolates you from absolutely everything. There's no wind noise, there's no road noise, there's no transmission noise, there's no intake, there's no clatter. It's just perfectly silent right here.
Oh, yeah. Right here. Oh, see, now I know where I am.
And
yeah, it's a very loud truck.
Yeah, the old school truck guys love the kind of the noise and the vibration, but if you're going to really be daily driving it with the family and towing regularly, like, it would get more tiring. What about design? Which one do you like more design-wise?
I think the fourth the fourth gen trucks and even newer, I really like the more modern body styles. There's not really a generation of this truck that I dislike aesthetically, but I would say like the fourth gen and newer trucks are the best looking.
Okay. Yeah,
I love that big front end.
I actually like this truck more. So this had Bob Lutz called it like the semi-truck design where the lights sit beneath the hood. It was really, really revolutionary when it came out. And it still looks good today. They followed it a little bit with the new one, but I think this is a really good looking truck. I'm going to go right here.
When I first bought this truck, I wasn't a huge fan of how it looked, but through the process of doing the body work that this truck needed, my roommate and I painting it in our garage, putting a new grill, shining up the bumper, and installing fog lights. Putting in all this effort to make this truck. I know.
You should have put some effort into making the truck have a suspension in your case.
Oh man, that's a lot of money. I wanted it to have paint, and I wanted it to look like a very period correct kind of truck. And through the process of my roommate and I restoring this aesthetically, I've actually grown to like the way it looks a lot more. And I like this interior a lot too.
And then, last question, how much do you think you have in this truck when it's all said and done?
Total, I've probably got about 24 grand or so into this truck, which for an old truck, is spending a decent amount of money, but compared to buying a brand new truck, and especially compared to buying a brand new heavy-duty diesel truck, that's nothing. And I get to have my manual transmission, I get to listen to my cassettes, which just makes me the happiest guy in Boulder, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I don't think you can get a manual in any version of this new 2500 Ram.
No, I think 2018 was the last year that you could get a manual. My roommate has a 6.7 Cummins with a manual. His is a 2017, so second to last year. And it's also a Laramie. It's all spec'd out, heated and cooled seats, everything, super rare configuration. Even when they were still making manuals in these trucks, it was really difficult to find it in anything other than a basic work truck, and now it's gone completely.
Yeah, it's a shame. Or is it a shame? I mean, I think if everyone was buying the manuals, Ram would have no reason to kill them off completely.
Yeah, I don't think normal people care that the manuals are gone. Realistically, most people don't want to tow with a manual. The newer trucks, like if you're going to be towing a large weight and going long distances, this is just going to be a better truck. And granted, it should be. It's a lot more expensive.
And speaking of towing, too, this one is somewhere around 16,000 pounds max towing, which is more than the 2500 of your generation.
Yep.
And then, of course, if you get into 3500, it's like over 35,000 now, or 37,000 or some ridiculous number.
Max tow ratings on modern trucks are ridiculous.
It's crazy. So, but 16,000 pounds should be enough for most of your horse trailers and all that kind of thing. It's more comfortable than your truck. It's a lot quieter than your truck. There still is, though, for the enthusiasts out there, there's still a little bit of that classic straight six growl. It isn't completely gone. There's still a little bit that kind of intake sound there. But it's been so much subdued. And speaking of subdued, exhaust-wise, these new diesels, of course, have particulate filters, and they have regen systems, and they, of course, use diesel exhaust fluid. I've got a gauge here on the dash reminding me of that.
But the nice thing about it is that you can stand next to this truck while it's running, and you're not going to develop a respiratory disease. If you stand next to my truck while it's running, it smells and feels as toxic as it is. It's not a fun machine to be around, and especially when it is cold outside, with the advanced timing that the fuel pump has on my truck. When it's cold, that it is not happy, and that is a super, super toxic, obnoxious white haze that comes out of it. It's not fun.
Kase came into the office the other day and left his truck running for just a sec and opened the door, and the entire team developed tuberculosis. Fun fact in the matter of 3 minutes. But no,
join the club.
In all seriousness, though, it is, of course, warranted. So this is a new truck. It's one of the advantages of buying a new truck, is that all the problems that you might have, regardless of what it is all covered underneath warranty if you should have problems. I think that's a lot of the reason people buy new trucks, is because they don't want to deal with the potential of having a vehicle with over 200,000 miles that may need the love. Now, you as an enthusiast, you enjoy the process of putting it back together, but I think a lot of folks, they just want a truck to tow their boat to the trailer or to the lake in extreme comfort, and this is the vehicle to do it in.
For sure. Most people don't live with a mechanic.
That's true. That's a good point.
Most people don't want to spend time working on their vehicle, and a new truck is perfect like that. No matter how well maintained it is, a truck that's got 250,000 miles, at some point it's going to need some amount of work and some amount of maintenance.
The other thing I appreciate is, unlike your truck, the passenger also gets an airbag.
Yeah, but that only matters if you crash. So, my truck has never crashed, and it's never needed to use its airbags, and I'm just going to keep up with that tradition. Can
we talk about how, I don't drive a lot of Cummins, but can we talk about how the RPM Redline on this vehicle is 3,250 RPM?
That's pretty high. Originally on my truck...
What are you paying for? Where's the rest of it?
Oh, you don't need the rest of it. You get all the torque almost immediately.
I paid for the entire RPM gauge. I want to use the entire RPM gauge.
Paid for the entire RPM gauge. It's an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah.
My RPM gauge goes up a lot higher than my truck actually revs, but it's aspirational. Maybe someday this will be an inexpensive truck and someone will buy it and tune it up and they'll make it so that it can rev to almost 5,000.
So now that you've spent some time in the 21 Ram 2500 6.7 Limited, are you still sticking with your choice with your $24,000 27-year-old Ram?
Hell yeah, this truck is great. It's so great, in fact, that it's boring. I could be in anything right now. If I close my eyes, this could very well be some comfortable rental car, and I would have no idea.
A comfortable rental Cadillac. Can I interest you in a tease of the remote start, or the blissful heated steering wheel, or your heated and ventilated seats, or...
Remote start would be nice.
Remote start is nice. Exactly.
Yeah, especially here in Colorado, any cold climate, not having to walk outside to set my truck warming up, that would be cool. But at the same time, I use a block heater, I'll step out the door, let my truck warm up for a couple minutes, and it does not take long. So yeah, I mean, older truck, it takes more effort. You have to spend more time thinking about it, more time working on it. You don't get as many features, but it's really not such a terrible thing to live with. And the advantages are you have a vehicle that's a little bit more unique, especially if you can get one of these older trucks in good shape. That's not super common. Most of them get pretty ragged out. And then again, not joking at all, stuff like the cassette player, every time I use that, it makes my day because it's so much more fun than just mindlessly telling Siri to play.
It's the same song though. You're gonna listen to...
It's the same song, but it's a different way to experience it.
A different way of experiencing it versus my 10,000 speaker Harman Kardon audio system here in blissful silence of...
Who needs it?
Not listening to diesel clatter. And may I interest you in adaptive cruise control?
No, you may not.
Have you ever road tripped with adaptive cruise control? I just did my first road trip with it. It will change your life.
I have road tripped with Tesla Autopilot, and I did not like it. The car kept trying to put me
that's
really close
to
the middle lane, and it just upset me, and I decided to actually drive the car for myself.
My man Rod Romaine, who's the chief engineer of the new 2500 Rams, he knows how to do an adaptive cruise. That's a game changer. I mean, it's an $86,000 truck. You get a lot of stuff for it. I don't know if I'd spend $86,000 for one, but I'd spend $60,000 for one that's pretty well equipped, and I think that's not that I'll ever have $60,000, but I'll let the bank spend $60,000 and then I'll pay them monthly for one, because I think that as a family hauler, it's much better. It's more usable. You can put your groceries in the back versus next to you.
Yep,
That is
nice.
That is a nice thing, and I think capability-wise, it's a little bit more capable, and it's just makes more sense. It's got a wider bandwidth than just being a cool truck.
Yeah, all jokes aside, this is a great truck. It does so many things so well. But at the end of the day, it is out of the price range for a lot of people that just need a truck to do truck things.
True that.